Well, at a Democratic Party fundraiser last night at James Murdoch's mansion in New York City, President Biden is saying that recent threats from Vladimir Putin could spell Armageddon for us all. Biden went on to tell supporters that the risk of atomic war had not been this high in 60 years. Biden telling the crowd, quote, "We have not faced the prospect of Armageddon since Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis." Now, Biden's mention of a nuclear holocaust was highly unusual, to say the least. Rarely has an American president spoken in such alarmist terms about the possible use of atomic weapons. So here to discuss is former Undersecretary of Defense, Secretary Robert Wilkie. Robert, I want to get right into this because Biden said that the risk of nuclear war, as you heard right there, is the highest in 60 years. How worried should we actually be, or is this a Democratic election tactic going into the midterms?
Well, the sad thing, Alex, and by the way, you've done great reporting in Europe for the last few months. The sad thing is this just is a continuation of the incoherence and sloppiness of this administration's national security policy. To be talking about Armageddon over champagne and brie is lunacy. What he should be talking about is deterrence and diplomacy, not campaign hucksterism. We're in this position greatly because of the incompetence of this national security team. We did not have any moves by Putin under Trump. And yet, when this administration came in, it gave the green light to the Russians to impose gas and energy blackmail over Europe. And of course, we had the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan. And a thug like Putin saw weakness and he acted.
And as you mentioned right there, the lack of a pursuit to have any really diplomatic off-ramp kind of makes us forced to think in the shoes of Russia. How will they act in this case? How will Ukraine act in a certain circumstance? So let's say for Putin, for example, does it make sense for Putin to nuke Ukraine, a country, by the way, that he says that he wants to make part of Russia?
No, it doesn't. And this is a desperation on his part. Let's just say he unleashes a few tactical nuclear weapons. Those were designed to take out thousands of NATO tanks and armored divisions and mechanized divisions. The Ukrainians aren't going to quit because of that. Putin knows he will lose once he does that. And that is the calculation that this administration should be taking into account. And behind all of this is our approach to China. I mean, the hard men in Beijing must be looking at this, looking at the Iranians with people flooding into the streets saying death to the Ayatollahs, and now Putin exposed to the world as the leader of a third world army. But what we need to do is be resolute, make sure the Ukrainians have everything that they need. They are moving into the Crimea. They are close to cutting off the Russian Black Sea Fleet from its base. They are on the steps of Kherson, as you know, and Putin is flailing. And the reports we're getting is that his inner circle of kleptocrats are now starting to get very nervous.
And that's been a concern this entire time, that Putin was getting bad information, that maybe he was surrounded by yes men who just wanted to pursue his agenda, maybe that he's an irrational thinker at this point. So it's worth asking the question, if Russia were to use nukes on a non-NATO member, such as Ukraine, what would the U.S. response look like?
Well, I think it would be a conventional response. I think you would see things like cruise missiles taking out the last lines of retreat for the Russians out of Crimea. You would see the use of standoff weapons. We know where every Russian tank and armored unit is. We cover the field with our intelligence. Another thing that's at play here is I think that several European leaders have certainly been more resolute than Mr. Biden. The new Prime Minister of UK, Liz Truss, reminded Mr. Putin that the United Kingdom has sufficient nuclear power to lay the entire nation of Russia to waste, that this is not something that you trifle with. So I think we should maintain our course, continue to give the Ukrainians what they need, and let's see what happens inside Mr. Putin's inner circle, because I believe that the majority of Europeans are resolute enough to stand up to his bullying.
And really quickly, before I let you go as well, if it's not nuclear weapons, is there a different type of escalation that you're scared of when it comes to Vladimir Putin? Chemical weapons, maybe just using more force in Ukraine, anything like that?
Again, that's a sign of desperation on his part, because what are you going to do? You've just told the Russian people that this is your territory, and if you irradiate it or make it uninhabitable with biological or chemical weapons, what have you done? You've probably killed more of your soldiers that way than the Ukrainians have.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, too, as we look at the success of Ukrainian forces in Ukraine, it does kind of bring up the question of, is this embarrassment enough for Vladimir Putin to act in a desperate way? We hope that it doesn't get to this point, but up to this point, his forces aren't acting the way that he thought they would going into this invasion.
I would say one quick thing, Alex.
Go ahead.
That suitcase that he carries around is not a direct line to set off nuclear weapons. He has to go through his chain of command. He doesn't have the codes in there. And I would think that several on the Russian general staff are very wary right now of carrying out any orders from Mr. Putin.
Sure. Another form of his saber rattling, I guess. But Secretary Robert Wilkie, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.